Give cease to the wagging of your tongues, and the slurping as your teeth pull meat from bone. Stifle, too, the clanking of tankards, the clinking of plates, and the shifting of chairs, and the noisome passing of gas from either throat or anus. Be still, and attend this humble wordsmith. Tonight I shall paint a story of a group known as the Deadly Omega-6. Ah, I see from your faces the deeds of these heroes are not unknown to many of you. Let me take you back long before they achieved a modicum of fame. Our tale begins. Hey, you! In the back! Yes, you! Shut your yammering a-hole or take it outside. Now, where was I? Yes, our tale. It begins in the sleepy village of West End, where dwelt Samora Ganzi, her parents, and her 4 siblings. Their days of idyllic living came to an abrupt end with the arrival of the Torkin raiders. Yes, I see some of you shudder at the very name, as well you should. It was a gloomy autumn morning when that foul assemblage of humans, orcs, goblins, and ogres set their sights on West End. By evening's fall, the village was a wasteland of embers and ash mixed with the lifeblood of livestock. Fortunate were the villagers who perished that day, for the survivors had to endure the raiders' lusts and need for violence, day upon day. As you may have guessed, Samora and her family numbered among the unfortunates. I shall not curl the food in your bellies with the descriptions of the cruelties the Torkin visited upon their captives, or the games of blood sport they were forced to participate in. Suffice it to say, it was a precarious existence of despair, misery, and pain. It is no wonder Samora's parents sought to escape with their children. Their bid for freedom, however, failed. For this offense, the Torkins publicly flayed the youngest of them. Samora could shut her eyes to that grisly spectacle, but nothing could keep the girl's screams from her ears. In the days and months that followed, those screams continued to echo in Samora's mind as she did what was necessary to survive. Powerless and without agency, she could not hope for more. In such conditions, time loses its meaning. Days blend into an unending blur of agony and horror. Eventually, though, something unexpected occurred. It came in the form of a strange man. With a well-groomed salt and pepper hair, neatly trimmed beard, and spotless clothing, Samora took him for a noble. No way was he one of the Torkin. Odd, then, he had strolled through the raiders' camp without drawing the least attention. He came up to Samora as she sat, stroking the hair of her sleeping sister, Zandaval, Samora's only family member that attrition had not claimed. He squatted next to her and whispered in a low voice that sent shivers down her spine.
Would you be free of this rabble? I can make that happen for you.
How? She managed dully. Hope was not an emotion she possessed any longer. The man pulled 2 sickles from behind his back. Unlike the simple farming implement she knew, these were not made of metal. Instead, they seemed forged of crescents of obsidian. Sluggish green lights danced in the depths of the material. He held them out to her.
Take the Ebenware twins and learn.
With the handles pressed so close to her, Samora instinctively gripped them. In that moment, she felt a terrible power suffuse her body. Her vision tinted green, and she sprang to her feet with boundless, hungry energy. Grok, the ogre, who was her chief tormentor, spied the sudden movement. He lumbered over to her. What have you got there? Without conscious thought, Samora slashed with the sickles, crossing them just under his chin. The ogre's head flopped back as the muscles in his neck separated and blood fountained. Someone screamed, and others shouted angrily. After that, things became hazy as she sank into a manic frenzy. All she knew was the pounding in her head, like tribal drums, and a flash of faces, too quick to register. When she finally regained her senses, the sun peaked above the hills. She stood amidst the carnage, drenched in blood, none of it hers. Raiders and captives alike had been cut down. The unholy weapons still in Samora's hands dripped gore. There could be no doubt she had been the source of the devastation. She found Zandaval among the dead, numb, beyond the reach of grief or guilt. Samora could do naught but stare down at the body. A jagged stroke had neatly cleaved her head from shoulders.
Master is most pleased.
An icy whisper tickled her ear. She turned to see the strange man standing there. Nary a drop of blood marred his pristine suit. He gripped her by the elbow and pulled her along.
Come, pet. I have work for you.
Behind them, the dead began to twitch. In moments, they rose and shuffled off in all directions. It would not be until much later that Samora learned that this event constituted a binding pact as far as the demon lord Orcus was concerned. Over time, she gained strength and confidence, and sought ways to subvert his thrall. Perhaps her most significant step towards ridding herself of this influence came the day she learned that she need not face the struggle alone. That revelation came about in a tavern in Scalia, so insignificant it did not even possess a name. Upon entering, Samora's eyes were immediately drawn to the barkeep. By all accounts, the lad was possessed of an allure that many women found desirable. He certainly filled Samora's mind with randy thoughts. She sidled up to the bar, and in her direct way said, "When you're done serving drinks, you and I should set my room a-shaking." The proposal found favor with the lad. However, a lady who called herself Foreshot had just spent half an hour flirting with the barkeep, intending to take him back to her room. Having invested that time, Foreshot was not well disposed towards this interloper. The two women exchanged heated words, tempers flared, and fists flew. This spark of violence quickly precipitated an all-encompassing tavern brawl. The local watch broke it up in due course, and deposited the combatants in jail cells to cool off overnight. As fate would have it, the two women were dumped in adjacent cells. Instead of fueling further animosity between them, this proximity gave rise to an enduring friendship. Just in case any of you are curious, Foreshot later found opportunity to return to that tavern and sample that barkeep's bedroom skills. She found the experience completely unsatisfying, telling Samora, "By the great stag, for all those pretty muscles, he was hung like a halfling." Seems there's a life lesson in that for all of you, yes? So anyway, also in attendance in that tavern on the same night as these two women first met was one Pasha Hassin bin Malik. A man of his self-perceived importance would normally never be caught dead in such a dive, but on this particular night he had it in his mind to engage in a bit of slumming and debauchery. He got more than he bargained for. During the brawl, one of Samora's wild elbows caught him in the mouth, and he lost 3 teeth. For this grave assault upon his person, Hassin hired an assassin, Garluk Planky, to bring back Samora's head. Now it should be said, Gorshak despised Pasha, and wanted nothing more than to rid the simpering fop of the rest of his teeth. Unfortunately, work had been scarce, since Gorshak had botched his last kill. He needed coin. More importantly, he needed to salvage his reputation. With great care, he selected an ambush site just outside of Scalia. He did not have to wait long for his quarry to appear. The moment was perfect. The sun was angled just right to shine in the woman's eyes. With what little breeze blew flowed directly towards them. No crowds were present to distract him. He sighted down his crossbow, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. And the bolt whizzed over their heads by more than 3 feet. It struck some poor ass in the hindquarters. The poor beast raised quite a ruckus, as you can imagine. This is why later the champions would often grouse Gorshak about pinning the tail on their foes. Legend has it that Samora and Foreshot exercised some deft diplomacy to convince Gorshak to forswear his commission and join with them. That's complete bollocks. Truth is, the half-elf was flummoxed and mortified with his dismal aim. In that moment, he suffered a crisis of professional confidence. Reaching such an emotional crossroads, a lesser man might have sought suicide by adventurer, but Gorshak was instead moved to change the course of his life. When Foreshot jokingly said he should slink out of town with them, he jumped at the chance. Unbeknownst to Gorshak, even if he had successfully carried out his mission, Hassan never would have paid the fee. At the time of the ambush, the Pasha was busy venting all of his blood through a dozen holes in his chest. He had mouthed off to a gnome in the market square, and she demonstrated just why she was called Agnes the Asp. Probably another life lesson there, Say, barmaid, could I trouble you for that foaming flagon in your hand? I'm not sure I'll be able to continue if my throat goes more parched. Aha, thanks, you're dear. So these 3 worthies set forth with adventure in the offering. And unlike many such adventurers, they did not immediately find themselves quick deaths. In due course, they set upon a quartet of ogres in a dank cave. After slaughtering the hapless brutes, they made an unexpected discovery. A naked, angry wizard, trussed up and soaking in a marinade. At first, they assumed the spicy sauce had blackened his skin. It was only after they exchanged names that they realized he was, in fact, a dark elf. Make not the mistake of referring to him as a drow. He'd like to shove a wand up your nose and trigger it for such an insult. This dark elf, Cozelle Dreadstorm, was grateful to have been spared the cookpot, and was more than a little smitten with Foreshot. This uncharacteristic onset of emotion both intrigued and terrified Cozelle. As such, he felt compelled to study the matter further, like it was some sort of logic problem that would yield its secrets, if only he applied his mind to it. However, he could not further his inquiry without proximity to his research subject, so he convinced the others to let him join their little band. Cazell is also the one who came up with the group's name, the Deadly Omega-4. Deadly because it sounded menacing, 4 because they numbered 4, and Omega just because he liked the way the word rolled off his tongue. None of the others cared if they had a name, so the appellation stuck. 4 soon became 6 with the addition of Halfling Ames Albrecht and the Tiefling Lazabeth Greystone. These two sought to rob the 4 of their food and water. At the time, both were suffering from the effects of extreme hunger, dehydration, and exposure, so the attempt failed pathetically. Fourshot took pity on them and offered to let them share their meal. They wisely stuck around after the food was gone. These two city dwellers never revealed how they came to be stranded in the wilderness without supplies. Some have speculated that they ran afoul of a wizard's teleportation trap. Others are of the opinion they were the sole survivors of an ill-fated caravan or adventuring company. Personally, I subscribe to the theory that the pair got blind drunk one night, and their erstwhile friends played a cruel prank on them. In any case, assembling a group of adventurers is not an uncommon thing. I count at least 2 such parties in the audience tonight. What makes the Deadly Omega-6 special is where they opted to direct their heroic intent. As all you gentlefolk may have surmised from the earlier in this tale, Samora found herself shackled to an infernal power. This was not a bargain she had sought or ever actually accepted. More than anything, she wanted to be free of it, and their companions agreed to help her find a way. Through might and magic, their quest eventually led them into the abyss, to the domain of the demon lord Orcus. Now, the Omega-6 were not foolhardy enough to confront such a powerful being in the seat of his power. Instead, they infiltrated the foul abattoir of Orcus's Grand Inquisitor Zork. This particular fell being was the one who had yanked the chains which bound Samora to Orcus, and made demands of her in his name. A direct confrontation with someone as powerful as Zork would also have been tantamount to suicide. Fortunately for their purposes, they did not need Zork dead, they just needed leverage. And they found it in the form of a fell artifact called the Eye of Orcus. The Demon Lord himself had charged his Lieutenant Zork with the Eye's safekeeping. Zork could not very well go to his liege and explain that an insignificant group of plain raiders had circumvented his security, stolen the Eye, escaped to their backwater on prime material, and successfully hidden it somewhere that blocked all of the Eye's malignant emanations. His master would have never tolerated such gross failure. Rather than bring such ruin down upon himself, Zork acquiesced to Samora's demands, and freed her from Orcus' service. And to ensure Zork did not later seek retribution, the Omega-6 retained possession of the Eye. Few are the mortals who can successfully negotiate with the Infernal and emerge with both their lives and souls intact. The Deadly Omega-6 managed it. But if any of you think you might be clever enough to repeat this feat, I caution you against it. Odds are you'll more than likely find a horrible death, or worse. Of course, it's only those who dare the impossible and succeed who find immortality in the bard's tales. On that note, I bid you a fair evening. May your paths be rosy and your burdens light. Oh, and one last thing, I do welcome your gifts and donations. Thank you. You may resume your revelries now.